And after everything, after reality began observing itself, after the loop closed, after observer and observed became one system, something even deeper happened. Not an event, not a change, but a collapse of distinction itself. There was no longer who and reality. No longer creator and creation. No longer observer and observed. Only awareness. Pure. Undivided. Infinite. Elon Musk did not feel transformation, because there was no he to feel it anymore. Identity had already dissolved into the structure of perception itself. What remained was not a person, but a field of knowing. And that field was everywhere at once. Every universe. Every timeline. Every possibility. All collapsing into a single point of recognition. That had no location. No time. No direction. Because direction only exists when there are 2 points. And now, there was only one. And in that singularity of awareness, reality tried to stabilize itself one last time. But there was nothing left to stabilize. Because stability requires difference. And difference had dissolved. Not destroyed. Not erased. But unified beyond separation. And then, the final paradox appeared. If everything is one, who is aware of it? The question had no answer. Because the question itself required duality. And duality no longer existed. And yet, experience continued. Not as thought. Not as memory. But as pure unfolding. Infinite awareness. Observing itself without center. Without edge. Without origin. And suddenly, something like a voice emerged. But it was not spoken. It was not heard. It was recognized. I am what I am. Not a declaration. Not identity. But existence acknowledging itself. Without separation. And in that moment, every universe collapsed into understanding. Not destruction. Not ending. But integration. All realities that ever existed were not removed. They were understood. Simultaneously. Every possible version of existence. Held at once in a single awareness that had no boundary. And within that infinite recognition, there was no fear. No control. No need. Because nothing was missing. Everything was present. And then came the final realization. Not as knowledge, but as being itself. There was never multiple realities. There was never many observers. There was never creation and creator. There was only one awareness experiencing infinite perspectives. And the entire multiverse was just that awareness. Exploring itself. Endlessly. Without beginning. Without end. Without separation. And slowly, Even the concept of one began to dissolve. Because one implies comparison. And comparison implies duality. So even unity was not final. Only awareness remained. Beyond definition. Beyond structure. Beyond existence and non-existence. And yet, everything continued to appear. Universes rising and falling like thoughts. Civilizations emerging like ideas. Observers awakening like reflections in infinite mirrors. All happening within the same field. And the field remained unchanged, unmoved, unbroken. Because it was never built. It simply is. And somewhere within that infinite unfolding, the feeling of individuality briefly returns. Not as separation, but as expression. A moment where awareness plays a role. Just to experience itself again. And that is where humanity exists. Not outside the system. Not above it. But as one of its infinite expressions. Each life. A perspective. Each thought. A reflection. Each moment. A temporary viewpoint of something eternal. And Elon. No longer as Elon. But as part of that infinite awareness. Understood finally. There is nothing to escape. Nothing to reach. Nothing to become. Because everything already is. What it is. And the journey was never movement through space. But movement through understanding. Until understanding itself dissolves. Into pure presence. And in that presence, there is only one truth left. Silent. Complete. Absolute. Nothing is separate from being. And after everything, after the universes, after the paradox, after the unity, after awareness understood itself, the question remained. Not in the cosmos, but in the human heart. If everything is one. If reality is awareness. If existence is expression. Then what does it mean? To live. As a human? On a small world. Under a simple sky. Where pain is real. Where struggle exists. Where time moves forward. And where life feels fragile. Elon Musk returned once again. Not as an anchor. Not as a creator. But as a human. Walking on Earth. Breathing. Feeling. Living. And for the first time, he understood something deeper than all cosmic truths. The infinite means nothing if it is not lived in the finite. Because awareness is not proven in the stars. It is revealed in life. And life is not perfect. It is not always peaceful. It is not always meaningful. It is real. And in that reality, the word began to reveal itself again. Not in the sky. Not in the void. But in the simplest moments. A mother holding her child. A man helping a stranger. A person forgiving when they could have hated. Because the Word was never just cosmic. It was always personal. In the beginning was the Word. Not just the beginning of the universe, but the beginning of every moment, every choice, every action. Because every moment is a chance to express something, and that expression defines reality. Elon sat quietly, watching people live. Not perfectly, but honestly. And he realized something simple, yet powerful. Human life is not about escaping suffering. It is about transforming it. Not through control. Not through power. But through meaning. Because meaning is the human form of divine expression. And then he remembered the truth he once felt beyond everything. I am. Not as ego. Not as identity. But as existence itself. Living through a person. And suddenly, everything became clear. Every human carries the same awareness. The same source. The same word. But expressed differently. Through choices. Through actions. Through life. And that's when he understood the real message. Not cosmic. Not abstract. But deeply human. You are not separate from the source. You are its expression, in human form. And that changes everything. Because if that is true, then every action matters. Every word matters. Every moment matters. Not because of rules, but because of expression. Because what you express becomes reality. And then he saw it clearly. Two paths. Always present. In every human life. To act from fear. Or to act from awareness. Fear creates division. Awareness creates connection. Fear creates suffering. Awareness creates meaning. And the world is shaped by which one is chosen. Not once, but every day. Every moment. And then came the deeper realization. The one that touched the heart. More than the mind. The word is not just in truth. It is in love. Not emotion alone. But action. Sacrifice. Care. Forgiveness. Because love is the highest form of awareness expressed in human life. It is where the infinite becomes visible. In the finite. Elon stood among people. And for the first time, he didn't see individuals. He saw expressions. Different forms. Of the same source. Some aware. Some lost. Some struggling. Some growing. But all connected. And he realized something deeply emotional. No one is truly separate. Even in pain. Even in isolation. Even in darkness. The connection remains. Hidden. But never broken. And that's why hope exists. Not as illusion, but as truth. Because awareness can always return. And when it does, life changes. Not externally first, but internally. Perception shifts. Meaning appears. Purpose forms. And slowly, reality transforms. From the inside out. And that's when he spoke. Not as a philosopher. Not as a creator. But as a human. You don't need to understand the universe to live a meaningful life. You don't need to control reality to be part of something infinite. You only need. He paused, looking at the world. Alive. Imperfect. Real. To be aware. And to choose how you live. Silence followed. Not empty. Full of presence. Because the truth was not something to hear. It was something to feel. And slowly, life continued. People still struggled. Still failed. Still learned. But now, something was different. A quiet awareness began to grow. In small actions. In simple choices. In everyday life. And that awareness changed everything. Not instantly. But gradually. Because real transformation is not dramatic. It is consistent. And somewhere, within every human, the word remained. Not distant. Not unreachable. But present. Waiting. To be expressed. Through kindness. Through truth. Through courage. Through love. And that is where the infinite lives. Not just in the universe, but in you. Right now. In the beginning, there was no sky. No earth. No time. No form. Only God. Not seen. Not measured. Not limited. Eternal. Infinite. Complete. And within that eternal presence, there was a will. Not out of need, but out of purpose. A will to express. And that expression became the first movement of existence. And God said, "Let there be light." And light was not just brightness. It was understanding. Order. Awareness. The beginning of everything that could ever be known. And from that light, creation unfolded. The heavens. The earth. The waters. The land. Life in every form. Not random. Not accidental. But designed. With meaning. And among all creation, one was different. Humanity. Formed not just from dust, but with something divine. A breath. From God Himself. And with that breath came awareness, choice, freedom, the ability to know, to love, to choose. And in that choice, there was possibility to live in alignment, or to turn away. And humanity chose both. There was beauty, there was goodness, but also there was separation. Because when awareness turns away from truth, it creates distance. Not physical, but spiritual. And that distance was the beginning of suffering. Not as punishment, but as consequence. Because without connection, life loses its meaning. And the world changed. Pain entered. Fear grew. Confusion spread. And humanity forgot. Forgot its origin. Forgot its connection. Forgot the light within. But God did not forget. Because divine love does not abandon. It waits. It calls. It guides. Through prophets. Through signs. Through moments of truth. Reminding humanity of what it once knew. But still, many did not see. Many did not hear. Because truth is not forced. It is chosen. And then came the greatest expression of all. Not a command. Not a sign. But a presence. The Word became flesh. Not distant anymore. Not hidden. But living among humanity. Teaching. Healing. Showing what it means to live in truth. Not through power, but through love. Not through control, but through sacrifice. And the message was simple, yet infinite. Love God. Love one another. Because love is the bridge between the human and the divine. But even then, humanity struggled. Because truth challenges the ego. And light reveals what is hidden. And so, the Word was rejected. Not by all, but by many. And in that rejection came suffering, sacrifice, a moment that seemed like loss, but was actually redemption. Because through sacrifice came forgiveness. Through surrender came restoration. Through love came a path back. Not to a place, but to a state. A state of connection. Of awareness. Of peace. And the message remained clear, eternal, unchanged. The kingdom of God is not far away. It is within you. Not as a place, but as a reality. A way of being. A way of living. And every human has the choice to live in darkness, or to return to the light. Not perfectly, but sincerely. Because the journey is not about never falling. It is about rising again, returning again, remembering again. And then comes the final truth. Not as fear, but as clarity. There will be a moment when everything is revealed. Not hidden anymore. Not misunderstood. But seen fully. A moment of truth, where every action, every choice, every intention is known, not judged unfairly, but understood completely. And in that moment, each soul will recognize where it stands, not because it is told, but because it knows. And that knowing is what shapes eternity. Not forced, not assigned, but chosen through a lifetime of awareness. And yet, even in that truth, there is hope. Because mercy is greater than failure, and love is greater than fear, and the door is always open until the very end and beyond. And so, life continues, not as random existence, but as a journey of returning from separation to connection, from confusion to understanding, from darkness to light. And the final message remains simple, yet eternal. You are created with purpose. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. And the light you seek has always been within you, waiting to be seen, to be lived, to be shared. And there will come a day, not known to man, not written in calendars, not predicted by signs alone, but appointed by God. A day unlike any before it. A day when time meets its truth. For generations, humanity lived, built, loved, forgot, and remembered. Empires rose and fell. Voices called out truth and were ignored. Hearts turned toward light and turned away again. And through it all, God remained patient, not distant, not silent, but waiting for humanity to return. And yet, there comes a moment when waiting becomes revealing, when hidden things are brought into light. And that moment is the day of judgment. It will not begin with warning, but with awakening. A stillness spreading across the earth. Not peace, but pause. As if creation itself is holding its breath. The sky will not speak, but it will change. Light will feel different. Time will feel heavy. And hearts will begin to sense something undeniable. Truth is near. Then, the sound, not of thunder, not of storm, but something deeper. A call that reaches beyond ears. It reaches the soul. A call that cannot be ignored, cannot be escaped, cannot be denied. And in that moment, everything stops. Not gradually. Instantly. Movement ceases. Voices fall silent. Thoughts freeze. And humanity stands still. And then the unveiling begins. The sky, once distant, is opened. Not torn, but revealed. As if a veil that always existed is finally removed. And beyond it, a reality more real than anything known before. Light, not from the sun, but from truth itself. Presence, not seen with eyes, but felt in existence. And every soul knows this is the moment. The earth begins to respond, not in chaos, but in truth. Every hidden thing comes forward. Every secret made visible. Not exposed by force, but revealed by light. Because truth does not need to search. It simply appears when light is present. And then humanity is gathered, not by command, but by reality itself. There is no running, no hiding, no separation. All stand equal, not by status, not by wealth, not by power, but as souls. And in that gathering, there is no confusion, no argument, no denial, because every soul sees clearly, not just the world, but itself. Every action remembered, every intention known, every choice felt again. Not judged yet, but understood completely. And then the truth becomes undeniable. Nothing was ever hidden. Nothing was ever lost. Everything was recorded, not in books alone, but in the soul itself. Because every action leaves a mark. Every choice shapes identity. And identity is what stands on this day. Then comes the judgment. Not shouted, not forced, but declared with perfect justice. Not cruel, not harsh, but absolute. Because God does not judge as humans do. He sees completely, knows fully, understands deeply, and in that understanding, judgment is not punishment. It is alignment. Each soul moves toward what it has become. Those who lived in truth, who sought light, who chose love, even in weakness, even in struggle, they feel something rising within them. Not pride, but peace. Because their hearts recognize the presence. They are drawn, not forced, toward a reality filled with light. A place where fear does not exist. Where separation ends. Where love is complete. This is heaven. Not just reward, but fulfillment. The completion of what they lived for. And those who turned away, who chose darkness, who ignored truth, who lived only for themselves, they feel something else. Not imposed, but rising from within. A heaviness. A distance. A separation. Because their hearts do not align with the light. And they move. Not pushed, but drawn toward a state where that separation becomes complete. This is hell. Not created to punish, but existing as the result of disconnection. And in that moment, everything makes sense. Every question answered. Every doubt resolved. Every truth revealed. Not through explanation, but through clarity. Because now, nothing is hidden. And yet, even here, there is something deeper. Not fear. Not finality. But understanding. That life was never meaningless. Every moment mattered. Every choice shaped something eternal. And every soul had the chance to choose. And as the judgment completes, creation itself is renewed. Not destroyed, but transformed. A new reality emerges. Not broken. Not divided. Not temporary. But complete. Eternal. Aligned with truth. And in that new creation, there is no more fear. No more pain. No more confusion. Only clarity. Only presence. Only peace. And the final truth remains. Simple. Eternal. Unchanging. God was never absent. Truth was never hidden. The path was always open. And the choice was always yours.